Hey everyone, Harris O'Malley from DrNerdLove.com, brought to you by my generous patrons at patreon.com/DocNerdLove. Before we get started this week, I want to do a quick bit of housekeeping. This is going to be the last episode for 2020. I'm going to be taking a short break into the new year just to recharge the creative batteries, make sure I avoid some burnout, and I'm going to be putting work into the next version of the Dating Accelerator project, as well as getting ready with the new videos that I've got planned for 2021. Like I've said in a few places, I'm working on a new series of videos about the lessons that we can learn about love, sex, relationships, and masculinity from pop culture, starting with Cobra Kai. If you've got a show or a movie or even a game that you would like me to talk about in this series, please be sure to share it in the comments. Now, I'll probably rerun some old episodes of the podcast, especially the ones that I started doing before I made the jump to YouTube. And of course, I am still writing and taking your questions at DrNerdLove.com every week, so be sure to keep checking in there. And naturally, there will also be announcements about some really exciting programs and workshops that I'm going to be launching in 2021. Now, as we're headed towards the end of the year, it is natural to look back at the year before and think about what we've done, what we haven't accomplished that maybe we wanted to, especially without a global pandemic getting in the way, and what we want to achieve in the coming new year. This is why I want to give all of you some advice that I honestly wish I had gotten back when I first started dating. Because if you're checking out these episodes, then the odds are good that, frankly, you think dating kind of sucks. And in fairness, you are not entirely wrong. Dating for men can be kind of awful, but not for the reasons you might think. In fact, the biggest reason why dating can suck for men is because of how much harder we men make it for ourselves, and in the process make ourselves miserable even when we think we're doing everything right. Now, to be clear, these are all very common mistakes. Mistakes, in fact, that I made when I was starting out, and quite frankly, I wish I had learned about these much earlier than I had. And speaking from experience, unlearning these mistakes can be difficult. Many of us have spent a lot of time laboring under these bad practices and these misconceptions, and that makes it really hard to root them out. Trust me, I know. Been there, done that, printed up the t-shirt. Actually, I really do have the t-shirt, check out the links. But I also know that when you unlearn these lessons and learn a better way, it makes everything much easier, much more relaxed, and much, much more enjoyable. And in the process, you will find that you will have far greater success than you currently are having. So, gentlemen, let us look at 5 reasons why dating can suck for men and what you can do about it. The first and possibly biggest mistake that a lot of guys are making is that they are coming to dating with the belief that they have to win with women, that women are actively looking for reasons or excuses to reject you, and that it's your job to pass her tests so that you can eventually prove that you have enough value or worth to date her. This isn't a thing. Women don't shit test guys to see if he's really worth dating or if he's of higher value. They're not going to insult you to see if you're going to zing him back or if you're going to see if you're going to sit there and take it. And they're not going to ask you to do things to test whether you can see through their bullshit or you're just too beta or whatever. They are not disrespecting you in order to gauge your reaction, and they are certainly not putting up bitch shields in order to ensure that only the best guys get through. And it's certainly not the case that the more value, for whatever weird-ass definition of value you're working with here, that she has, the more that she's going to test you. In fact, most of the time, if a woman has her so-called bitch shield up, it's because she's just not interested, and she's had a lot of people ignoring her lack of interest, and this has been pissing her off. That doesn't mean that she's pre-rejected you or that you failed her tests. And even if you're just being turned down, that doesn't mean that you weren't of high enough value or that you weren't as good as someone else. It is almost always a case that the two of you simply weren't compatible. And really, the ones who are just dismissive, disrespectful, or insulting you from the jump, they're not shit testing you, they're just being rude. The problem is that guys tend to take all of this very personally and assume that it is about them as an individual, when it isn't. Women aren't going around actively gauging who's fuckable and who isn't like some weird sexual terminator. They're just trying to go through their day. Think of all the women that you encounter on a daily basis that you aren't interested in. You don't hate them, you don't dislike them, you're just neutral on them. The same applies to women. Their disinterest isn't a value judgment on you, and it doesn't mean that they've pre-rejected you. It just means they're not interested, and it's really no more significant than that. Buying into the idea that you need to prove your worth or pass her tests leads to a conflict mentality, one that makes it impossible to actually relate or connect with the people that you're meeting. You can't generate mutual interest when you're convinced that you have to play dominance games or have weird PUA-inspired frame control contests or buy into other bullshit ideas like who cares least wins. As the saying goes, play stupid games, win stupid prizes. But this attitude all actually ties in to the next mistake men make. Just like the previous mistake, when you go into dating with a conflict mentality, you tend to see dating and sex as being a competition about dominance, not about building connection. A lot of guys, especially men who've been caught up in the PUA scene or red pill bullshit, tend to buy into this. They see relationships as being about who's in charge or who's on top, rather than a partnership, something collaborative that you both build together. A lot of this comes across in bullshit rules and tactics that are supposedly about proving your value or passing those mythical shit tests. Negging is the classic example. In theory, it's supposed to be showing that you are clearly of higher social value because you're willing to tease or mock someone and bring her down a peg, causing her to theoretically crave your validation. But honestly, it doesn't work like that. You're just insulting her. The same goes with things like trying to catch out a woman who gives you a fake number or invents a boyfriend when you ask her out, or says that she can't go out, but then you catch her on Instagram out with her friends. Proving that she gave you a fake number or that her boyfriend doesn't exist isn't gonna make her say, "Oh, you were so clever to see through my trick, now you have earned the right to date me." It's just gonna confirm that she was right to turn you down in the first place. But you'll find people making this mistake just as often with random advice, and I use that word sarcastically, about how to keep women under control or how to keep the upper hand in the relationship, such as having artificial limits on how often you're willing to text or talk to them, or how fast a relationship is supposed to progress, or for that matter, being unwilling to actually be good in bed. No, for real, he's being serious with this. All this does is just make it impossible to build a real, genuine connection that you need in order to start a relationship, or even to have just satisfying sex for that matter. Now, to be fair, there have been folks who have advocated that women should play the same sort of weird head games, and I'm sure a lot of you remember the book The Rules from the 90s and early zeros. But those are equally as batshit and bullshit, and the only way to win with anyone of any gender who plays stupid games like this is to walk away. When you treat relationships and dating as something that you have to win or being about who's in control, you can never relax, you can never be genuine, and you will never actually be happy. So it's a small wonder that people who buy into the conflict mindset have relationships that fall apart in days or weeks. Everyone is miserable, nobody is genuine, and the entire relationship is just one altercation after another. Relationships are inherently collaborative. They're not a bargaining session where you're trying to arrange who gets the best price and who gets what they want. They're a jam session. Here's what you bring to the table. Here's what they bring to the table. Let's put it together and see what happens. Trying to control the relationship is a great way to just watch it blow up, messily and all over the place. The third mistake men make is that a lot of folks get their information from the wrong sources. Case in point, back when I was studying pickup, we were taught an untold number of rules that were handed down like Moses bringing tablets down from the mountain about what women wanted in men, about what women thought about sex, how long it took for a woman to decide that she wanted to have sex with you, and so forth and so on. The problem is that all of these so-called rules were based on men's ideas and assumptions about women and about female sexuality. Now, had any of them actually talked to women about these rules and gotten their input on it? No. Had they done any research into studies about female sexuality, or say, how social roles can affect sex and sexuality? Also no. They literally came up with these rules out of whole cloth, based on ideas they felt were true because everyone knew that women didn't like sex and so on. Needless to say, pretty much none of them ever actually work in the real world. But here we are, 15 years later, and I still see people espousing the exact same bullshit, just occasionally dressed up in Evo Psych drag, but still having about as much validity as the idea that there is an evolutionary basis for blue being a boy's color. And of course, you can have great fun by seeing people's brains vapor lock when reality refuses to go along with their supposedly ironclad rules. Now, a great example of this, and it comes up a lot, both in the comments and elsewhere, is the idea that women don't face rejection from men. And yeah, they do, all the time. Even if we ignore pretty much every woman who has ever complained about being turned down for a date or rejected by a guy she had a crush on, there is an entire industry based around teaching women how to avoid getting rejected from a guy, how to get a guy to ask her out, how to get into a relationship, and how to keep her man. All you have to do is just look at the cover of half the magazines in the racks, or look at the titles in the relationship section at your local Barnes & Noble. Or hell, just check YouTube. One of the reasons why so many men struggle with dating is because they're often reacting to their idea of who women are and what they want, even as actual women tell them otherwise. Twitter user Amani on Earth provided an astounding example of this, sharing a conversation she had with a guy that she matched with on a dating app. Despite the fact that she had actively shown interest and in as direct and unambiguous a way as you possibly can, her match was still absolutely convinced that he was just too short for her and that there was no way that she could actually like him. Not only did he snatch defeat from the jaws of victory, but after she unmatched him because of his misery vomit, he then went on to stalk her on Instagram in order to keep complaining. Literally, all he had to do was shut up and take the win, but he was so convinced that his self-limiting belief was more valid than the woman telling him that she was interested in him. This is why it is important to actually listen to women and try to understand their perspective and their side of things instead of making assumptions without evidence outside of, well, it's obviously true, or on the word of dudes on shitty subreddits who will tell you that women are clearly lying to you because f you penis, that's why. And that all needs to come with a certain amount of self-awareness. The idea that women only want one kind of guy is, on its face, absurd. Even ignoring just going out and looking at couples in real life. And I mean in real life, not on social media. You can even look at your own preferences and notice how varied and diverse the body types you are into can be. And honestly, using the excuse of women squeeing over Hollywood celebrities or Instagram models is about as valid as insisting that men only want one body type based on what kind of porn they're jerking off to that day. I mean, hell, the same thing applies to dudes who send dick pics. Even if we focus exclusively on the guys who legitimately and honestly think that sending a woman a dick pic is going to turn her on, they're sending the wrong pictures. Women's erotica and porn doesn't feature disembodied phalluses. It is about the entire person the penis is attached to. Studying the pictures that women find sexy will give you a much better idea of how to shoot and send pics they'd be into. Now, there are a lot of ways to get a firmer grasp of women's perspectives when it comes to dating and attraction. And the obvious one is to literally just listen to the women in your life, not asking them to teach you how to be more attractive to them, but just listening to their experiences, their adventures, and their problems without assuming that you know better. But you can also learn a lot by paying attention to the advice that women give to other women so that you can get an idea of what women struggle with. Or you could read studies that actually break through stereotypes about sex and sexuality. If you need a starting point, I highly recommend checking out Jenna Birch's The Love Gap. Though, full disclosure, I've interviewed Jenna on this channel, and I was interviewed for the book. I also recommend you check out books like Faking It by Lux Alptrum and What Do Women Want by Daniel Bergner. Now, keep in mind, The goal here isn't to find new insight that you can use to get laid. It is to build empathy and understanding so that you can start getting out of your own way. Once you realize how much of what you're struggling against are your own misconceptions, it becomes a hell of a lot easier to let go of assumptions and resentment and actually connect with people on a genuine level, which helps take your dating success to new heights. But while we're talking about assumptions, let's talk about the other side of that coin. One of the things I see all the time, and I see this in my clients, in the comments, and I hear this from the people who write into the column, are people who believe that their past mistakes mark out the limits of who and what they are and what they can achieve. Most of the time, not always, but most, this spins out of the first time they got a serious rejection. And for a lot of folks, that's high school or college. And look, I'm being honest here. I get it. The scars of high school run deep, especially when there is a constant cultural drumbeat about how important high school is supposed to be, and the idea that high school and college are the prime years of your life. And they really, really aren't. In fact, high school is possibly the worst time to actually try to date, because everyone is freaking the out between not knowing who you are as a person, trying to establish your own identity. Your hormones are screaming at you constantly, and the social dynamic is less real life and more maximum security prison. But the fact that a lot of people take those early experiences, complete with the bullying, social pressure, and everyone acting like they're stuck in an emotional battle royale, and define themselves by those initial experiences, extrapolating their entire future lives from it. But even if you aren't holding around the scars from high school, people still treat their failures as definitional. And worse, they keep telling themselves that this failure or that experience means they cannot and will never improve. The biggest issue here is that through constantly dwelling on and repeating the idea that you're helpless and hopeless, you're invoking what's known as the illusory truth effect, a cognitive bias where people begin to believe that which they hear over and over again. Repeated exposure to an idea causes you to believe that it's true regardless of its validity. This is why people who find themselves in conspiracy theory forums start to buy into patently absurd ideas after having been exposed to them over and over again, or why the incel community becomes convinced that the reason for their being single isn't because of their glaring and obvious hatred for women, but because they don't squint the right way. No, I'm serious. That's a real thing. They call it hunter's eyes. That's why the first step to breaking this mistake is to stop exposing yourself to those beliefs. Part of stopping being an incel, for example, is to leave the incel community and to quit visiting the boards and subreddits that reinforce that outlook. People who step away from the community and actually interact with folks in the real world quickly discover just how wrong all of the beliefs the incel community taught them actually are. The same goes with not repeating to yourself over and over again about how you're a loser, how you're helpless, or that this failure or that experience is proof that you will never improve or that nobody could ever find you attractive. Now, this all seems absurdly simple. Doctor, it hurts when I do this. Well, stop doing that. But it's true. The first step to improving your social skills and getting better at dating is to stop telling yourself constantly that you suck at dating. And the next step is to accept that dating and socializing is a skill, one that takes practice. Part of what's so absurd about this mistake that so many guys make is that dating is one of the few areas that people tend to assume that improvement is impossible. It doesn't matter, that nobody honestly believes that someone is going to be an expert at basketball the first time they ever set foot on the court, or that you're going to be able to write amazing code the first time you sit down at a computer. But people still buy into the idea of the dating binary. Either you're good with women or you aren't, and there's nothing you can do about it. The problem is as much about perception as it is about attitude. Part of why it seems like other people don't struggle the way that you do isn't because they won the genetic lottery or because they're naturally gifted. It's that you never see the whole picture of somebody else's life. You haven't seen them struggle with talking to people. You haven't seen the mistakes that they have made or the things that taught them how to socialize more effectively. You're only seeing the end result of everything they've gone through. Michael Jordan didn't start off as the greatest basketball player in history. Bruce Lee wasn't a pure martial arts prodigy who never had to work at it from the day he was born. Everybody who is good at something put time and effort into their craft and into their skills. What you're seeing is a result of practice, study, and repetition, not just an instant inherent gift that you never received. When you define yourself by what you assume are your limitations, and you repeat that these are your limits, you immediately cut yourself off from the ability to grow and improve. It creates a self-fulfilling prophecy. You believe that you can't succeed, so you don't put genuine effort into learning and developing your social skills. Then, when you get turned down again, or you flub something, you take that as confirmation that you can't succeed, and so the cycle continues. Social skills are skills, and any skill can be improved with time, with effort, and with deliberate practice. And here's the thing. Nobody, and I mean nobody, cares when you started or when you had your first relationship. And I can tell you from personal experience, nobody I have ever dated or slept with has ever asked me about how many sex partners I had or when I had my first girlfriend. Women aren't dating you for your resume or your relationship history. They're dating you as a holistic individual. And likewise, you don't need to be the social equivalent of an Olympic athlete to be successful. As I said, you're not fighting your way past having been pre-rejected. You're just trying to connect with people who want to connect with you too. But that actually leads us to our last and possibly most important mistake. Here's a secret about dating. If dating feels like you're pulling teeth, you're doing it wrong. Now, this is the thing that brings up a lot of argument, and I can already hear so many of you limbering up your fingers so that you can yell in the comments about how it's impossible to meet women, and the women you meet don't like you, and so forth and so on. Hold up. Hear me out. This is something I go into in depth in my book, Simplified Dating. Check out the show notes for a link where you can get a copy. But part of the problem is that men who are trying to get better at dating tend to devote all of their energy to the wrong areas. Worrying about having the perfect physique or being high value or specific flirting techniques are all examples of throwing effort into areas that give you the least return for your investment. What really matters? Building chemistry, understanding the aspects of attraction that are actually important, what actually makes a woman want to spend time with a man, and importantly, how to find and meet women who are actually right for you. It does you no good to go and try to meet women who you may well think are hot as hell if you have nothing in common with them and they are fundamentally incompatible with you. Now, I will be the first to tell you, meeting women and finding women who you are compatible with is a numbers game. Even people who might be right for you may not be in the right place in their life to date, or you and they may not be right for each other yet. That's not your fault and that's not their fault. That's just life. Like a wise man once said, it is possible to commit no errors and still lose. That's not weakness. That's just life. But you maximize the odds of meeting people who are right for you by simply being social, by talking to people, and actually living your life in ways that bring you in contact with folks, guys, gals, and non-binary pals that you would want to hang out with even if dating were completely off the table. And yes, online dating has its own challenges, but as with a lot of dating challenges, this has everything to do with the way that men and women use online dating differently. I have devoted an entire episode to this topic specifically, so hit the thing or go down to the show notes where I've left a link so you can check it out. But the number one reason why guys tend to struggle in dating, why dating is so much harder than it needs to be for them, is that they're putting far more energy into chasing women who don't chase them back. They are putting all of their time and all of their energy into trying to change the mind of someone who, frankly, isn't interested. The friend zone is a classic example of this. Men who get trapped in the friend zone could leave at any time. All they have to do is let go of that particular person and go pursue someone else. They choose not to give up on her. And as a result, they're throwing time and energy at women who simply aren't into them and aren't going to be. When you find that someone just isn't willing to keep up their end of the conversation, or you struggle to actually get them to reply to your texts, or they either ghost you or just give you constant excuses why they can't see you, those are all signs that you are investing effort in ways that will never pay off. It doesn't matter how much you water a dead plant, it's not going to grow. But when you find someone that you're vibing with, that you're actually compatible with, and who's into you, then things feel much easier. It flows naturally. You don't struggle to keep the conversation going because they're enjoying it as much as you are, and they're contributing as much as you are. You don't have a hard time trying to make plans because they want to see you too, and it's only a matter of making your schedules match up. If you feel like you're struggling to constantly get their attention, or it seems like you're putting in all of the work with one person with very little return, then it's time to step back and decide that maybe, just maybe, you should be putting more effort into a relationship that's actually mutual. Now, I'm not gonna lie, dating does have its challenges. Social skills are skills, and you have to practice them in order to improve. But when you can recognize these very common mistakes, it all comes much easier. So, if you're struggling with dating, take some time, fix these mistakes, and watch how dating goes from something that you hate to something that you really enjoy. So, that's going to do it for this episode. Thank you so much for being here. Like I said, I'm going to be on a brief hiatus as I work on new projects for this channel, talking about lessons in love, relationships, and masculinity that we can learn from movies, TV shows, even comics, books, and games. So if you've got something you'd like to see me talk about or break down, be sure to share it in the comments. We'll be launching it in the new year, so make sure that you subscribe and hit the bell to get notifications so that you'll know when the first episode goes live. Meanwhile, if you are ready to build up your social skills to find your perfect partner in the coming new year, then check out my book, New Game Plus, The Geek's Guide to Love, Sex, and Dating. This is the instruction manual you have always wanted. The A to Z guide for learning how to be a dating Jedi and to find the relationship you have always dreamed of, whether it is for a lifetime or just that night. Links to buy it are in the show notes, so go check it out. And if you do check it out, or any of my other books for that matter, be sure to rate and review it on Amazon and Goodreads. That would be a huge, huge help to me. Now, if you're digging the series, then you know what to do. Hit that thumbs up, share it around with your friends, like, share, subscribe, ring the bell. This is not your first time on YouTube. You know how this works. But if you are really enjoying these videos, if you feel like you're getting a lot out of it, you're finding that it's helping you, and you want to help support the channel, and in the process, help fund some awesome new projects, and things like, hiring an editor and an art director, consider becoming a patron at patreon.com/drnerdlove. Even $1 is a huge, huge help. It covers hosting, it covers equipment costs, and like I'm always saying, I can't do this without the help and the support of my patrons, so thank you all so, so very much. Meanwhile, follow me on Twitter at @DrNerdLove. Join the private Facebook group NerdLove Academy at facebook.com/group/drnerdlove. And as always, hit that logo to subscribe, check out my other videos, and I will see you here next time with more about love, sex, and dating. Thanks for watching.